Thank you for being here, Stephen. Let me go ahead and give a little introduction for those of you that are live, and we are going to be recording this on a podcast as well for later. Season 3 of my podcast actually came from Stephen Ross contacting me. And he had watched a podcast with Adam Robinson and said, "What are you doing in your podcast?" And he sparked an idea for me. And that translated into today's presentation that I'm super excited to give to you all. And so season 3 is simply authors that have written books that will actually impact the real estate industry. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Stephen Ross, Doors Open When You Knock, a Realtor's Handbook, which you can see in the background. So welcome, Stephen, to the podcast today. How are you?
Fantastic.
Good. I know we were talking about Kyle, our KW producer in the background. He's done a fantastic job getting you all over the Market Center so that people can watch us live today. I had a lot of questions as I went through your book, and including things like what got you to be an author, and you and I had so many questions. We decided to scale that down to 5 important questions that realtors could actually benefit from today. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Anything that you want to tell us before I get going on my questions?
Well, let's just preface it. Let's just set the stage for who I am, right? Yeah. I am the worst person to be a real estate agent. I'm antisocial. I'm introverted. I'm a bit lazy. I don't work nights or weekends. You can't find me online. And honestly, I really don't even like my phone ringing.
I found you online. I found you on Amazon. I guess I'm a good stalker.
Up till now, right? Up to the last year, right? As a real estate agent, right? You cannot find me. It's like, does this guy even exist? Like
the secret agent.
Yeah, I'm the secret agent.
And so is that what got you inspired to write your book? Tell us what inspired you.
I mean, a couple things. One is, and you and I were just talking real briefly before we started, for me, right, and I can only speak for myself, that we all have gifts. My gift is being able to help people in certain realms. And it's fun. It's awesome. It's a privilege to sell real estate, right? And to help people buy and sell real estate. But it's also a gift to be able to contribute to another human being in other ways, and helping them grow their business, be more present, be more fulfilled, have more joy. And so the book was really an access for me to reach more people and create that for more individuals. And I figured the best way to do that would be to document the journey of what it takes to succeed in real estate. And I don't mean, but everyone's success is different. My success is not your success, which is, and everyone listening has a different level. So I'm not saying what everyone's level should be. We all have one in mind. Mine was not that high, right? My goal was never to make $1 million. I was never going to be the rock star. How do I do well, be well? How do I have a life and raise my kids and still have a good income? That was really it. And I think for many agents, they would love to just get to that part. How can I reliably produce and take my kids on vacation, or my spouse or my parents or whatever, whoever's important to you. And so I felt that the book really documents what does it take to just do well and be well. And then everyone can fill in their level of success monetarily or outside of that.
I love that. I was just actually on a coaching call this morning, which I've shared with you, about my expansion team. And one of my partners definitely has been going through that, right? Like, where is my place? What am I supposed to be doing? And I really utilized some information out of your book to talk to my whole group this morning. And I was excited that you had written this. So I'm going to get started with the first question. So tell us how door knocking put you head on with resistance. And I think the first thing that's important to talk about, because you talk about gravity and you talk about what resistance actually is to say, okay, here, tell us what you mean by resistance, and then tell us what you mean by door knocking.
Great. So resistance, is not resistance with a lowercase r is in the dictionary. We can all look it up, right? Yeah. It's an oppositional force, essentially. Resistance that I mentioned in the book is what Stephen Pressfield writes about in The War of Art and several other books, capital R, like as a force, like gravity that is there to do one thing, and that is to keep us safe. And usually through fear and distractions is how we keeps us to keep things as they are. That is the force of resistance. And right, I got into real estate and I had 3 kids to feed. I got into real estate March 15th, 2005. My 3rd child was born the next month. And as we know, this is a commission-only business. 3 mouths to feed. I'm antisocial and introvert. I don't do parties. I don't do open house. How the heck am I going to feed these kids? And what I was very clear about, though, is that this was a people business. You need to talk to people. And eventually I just settled on that I was going to knock on doors. It was simple. It was straightforward. There was no thinking about it. It was just get out of your car and start walking, right? And you never run out of houses to knock on.
Yeah.
And so resistance then is, all right, well, what do I say? And what do I wear? And where should I go? And what should I bring with me? Well, I could spend 3 months figuring that out, coming up with the perfect neighborhood that has the right turnover, and right, you could do that.
It's the getting ready to get ready.
Getting ready to get ready, right?
Yeah.
All of that is, you could say, is part of the resistance.
Yes.
Right? Because it'll keep me safe from actually having to go do the thing that I need to do to move myself and my life forward. That's only one level of the resistance, because once I got that handled, then it was still every day I got to go out and knock on doors, but stuff comes up. Kids get sick, emergency calls from clients,
Yeah.
Note, there are no real emergencies in real estate. Houses don't bleed to death. It's just,
I just said this. I was like, call 911 yesterday. I was like, it's not a real emergency. It's just lack of planning yeah.
It's, this is the classic example. This morning, and I have 2 phones, by the way, so that when I can be distraction free. This is my work phone. And a client, my phone doesn't even turn on until 8:30. And I turned it on, and a client, needs me to call him to get this $2 million listing signed. He's like, I'm up at 6:30. Well, I sent that to you yesterday at 1 p.m.
Right.
I have stuff planned this morning. I am not calling you at 8:30 or whatever time my phone turned on, right? I will call you when it's time for me to call you.
Yeah.
And so as your day is planned, I'm not knocking on doors this moment because of the pandemic, but pre-COVID, I would, things have to happen when they happen. Otherwise, we don't get to do the things we're supposed to do. Right. What I'm saying is not new. Everyone's heard this. But because the exercise itself was so simple, because I was so committed to it, every day I could watch what made me late, what made me go to bed late, what made me wake up late, why did I quit the doors early? Those were all levels of resistance. Whenever I looked, it was always some fear or some distraction looking to take me out from doing the one thing and only thing that I needed to do to move myself forward. And so that's why I say resistance and doors, knocking on doors literally, was such a great lesson. Yeah. Not saying everyone should go knock on doors. You can use the analogy and apply it to yourself.
Right.
But yeah, that was for me.
And so what did you actually, this is what a lot of people have asked me when I said that I was going to be interviewing you. They said, did he actually door knock? And so you did. You door knocked. Was it successful?
Yeah, I've been knocking on doors up through the pandemic, so that would have been 16 years, 125,000 doors.
Wow.
125,000 doors.
It's crazy. Well, I'm glad about the $2 million listing you just signed.
Right. Someone I met from the doors.
I like it. Well, I think that it proves that you're diligent and that you'll get out there and you work for people. And I think that people see that. And I always say energy creates more energy. And so that is part of it. Let's talk about how you schedule time on your calendar, because what I wrote down and I sent to you, because it made me laugh when I saw this excerpt in your book, it said, I said, tell us how you schedule time on your calendar for a nap.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Naps are important to me because, remember, and I'm an introvert, even though I look extroverted, I'm highly skilled, but deep down inside, I'm exhausted, right? When I do this, when I do any of my trainings, when I'm at the doors, when I'm with a bunch of people, and then I'm pooped, I need a nap. I need to recharge. So I have a whole system for, this is totally embarrassing. Like I have all these spots where I park, depending on time of year, where the sun is it shady, is it cold? Just I need 20 minutes where I know no one's going to shake the car or break in, and we're going to just whip
when
out,
I
20-minute
in
nap.
your car, I was like, what is going on? I'm like, he doesn't live in Portland. What is he doing sleeping in his car, right? We have that going on all the time while we're here.
I heard.
So you actually time block to get energy back. So first and foremost, I think it's super important for realtors that are listening to this on Getting to Know Your Realtor podcast is that you need to understand your energy first. You need to understand your strengths and your weaknesses, which I talk about in a lot of classes that I teach, but you have to understand your strengths and your weaknesses. And then what you did, if I'm hearing you correctly, is you time blocked for your weakness, which was, I'm going to get exhausted from being around people. And so what is your calendar time blocked from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day? Or tell us what your time blocking looks like.
Up until COVID, because, I wrote the book and published the book, now my day looks much differently, not just because of COVID, but because of this other part of my business. Mm-hmm. So there's other layers, but up until a year ago, essentially my calendar, after 9 a.m., after 9 a.m., my calendar often had one appointment. And that was to go to the doors. And if I didn't have another appointment, right? Because if you sell 20, 30 homes, you don't have an appointment every day. And I don't go on appointments just to go on appointments. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
So if 1, 2 o'clock comes around and I don't have another appointment, I'm free. I don't have anything I have to do, right? Yeah. Now I do things, I do meet with people and I do those things, but that's a choice. That's not because I have to. And I'm not putting things on to fill my time anymore. That's Notice awesome. I said anymore, right? This was a progression. I didn't start this way.
Right. So if I hear you correctly, because I think that time blocking is one of the hardest things that I coach people on, is that you put the have-tos on your calendar and what we call, of course, the big rocks. Those were your have-tos. And then everything else that came in throughout the day was during times where you didn't have appointments, correct?
That's correct.
I love that. Okay. Lead generation was an appointment.
That is the appointment. It is the appointment.
It is the appointment. I love it.
And here's the thing, Leann, I just want to one add thing, because I think this was the benefit to knocking on doors, because it was so simple. There's not a lot of figuring it out. I didn't have to reinvent it every day. I didn't have to worry on some algorithm. I didn't have to it was already there in physical reality. And therefore once I was clear that was my commitment, it just became unbelievably simple. Most people, agents, if they don't have something that defined, picking what it is that's the one thing is incredibly difficult. And that's where I think people get stuck. I think everyone understands schedule the most important thing. Figuring out what that is and making that a habit is the challenge.
Well, John Maxwell said, if you take the same tool to the same tree every single day, you're going to cut down a forest. But if you always pick up a new tool and you go to a different tree every day, you're going to constantly be in that exhausted place. And so you picked your one thing that you're going to do and you hit on it every single day the same exact way. You didn't say, I'm going to sometimes door knock, and then I'm going to sometimes send mailers, and then sometimes I might try to see if I can meet those people at a social function. You said, I'm just going to door knock the same neighborhood over and over and over until I get there. Yep. What's funny is so I quoted John Maxwell just a second ago. You love books because you quote books throughout your entire book. You love books, but you also love movies, yeah?
I do love movies.
Is that how you get some of your energy back?
Well, that's a great question. Naps is how I get my energy back.
More naps for everybody. Well, you quoted Pretty Woman, which is one of my favorite movies, which is why I camped on this, because I just think, of course it's that, urban fairy tale, if you will. And so you said, you talked about the brick phone, and you said it translates oh so well into real challenges for many of us, which is progression, quote unquote progression. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, if I'm remembering what I even wrote, right? That movie was made in 1990.
Yeah.
Right. And so with that giant cell phone, I don't have anything that even resembles it. It was massive. And today, right, we have these things, which
Yeah.
are ridiculously powerful, and they do a lot more, like, obviously. But like these didn't even come out till 2006.
Right.
So
I had BlackBerry when the last real estate weirdness was going on.
yeah, and right, but we only remember that things are the way they are now, and we forget that it took time to get to where we are now. And therefore, when we look at our business, and this section was in the chapter about instant gratification versus patience, is that we just think everything should happen overnight. Right? I can order food overnight. I can do everything now. So why can't I sell 100 homes today? And it's not the same thing. It happens over time, right? I didn't figure out door knocking was my one thing on day one. I didn't figure out how to do it every day on day one. I didn't have all of those things on day one. It took time to get to that place.
Yeah. I think I started doing real estate things back in probably 2004 to 2005. And even, or no, excuse me. No, not 2000s, 1995, 1996, somewhere around in there, 1994. And I was flipping houses, and houses were going like crazy, right? So I was just doing that. I'd go over there, I'd paint, and they'd go like crazy. And what's interesting about you bringing up that the iPhone not coming out till 2006 was that the market was hot again in 2006. And I told you that I wanted to talk to you about coronavirus and how this feels very similar to me, like it did back then. It's like this frenzy, except for it doesn't quite make sense, kind of like what Adam Robinson talks about. You know, he's like, if it doesn't make sense, you better start paying attention to it, right? And you and I both agree, like that man is the oracle. So how do you feel about the market right now? What do you think?
I mean, as you said, I mean, our opinion of it makes no difference. We have clients, right? And our clients don't pay us to know. Our clients do pay us to help them make the best decision they can. And so, advising them of pros and cons to everything and then letting them choose, I think is always the best strategy for me. And we can talk more about that. Probably won't have time to talk about that. But as far as how this is going to shape up, it doesn't really matter what I think. I think that regardless of the market we're in, we have to serve our clients. And our opinion, and whether we like the market or hate the market, is irrelevant. And don't get me wrong, I hate this market. I don't like it. Well, it doesn't matter.
There's not enough naps. Well, yeah, because it's a frenzy, and that's not your pace that you love to work with your clients. What's funny is Gary Keller has said in the past, the market, your city, it doesn't really matter. You can find business wherever you are. And when you and I first got together, I said, we talked about you work for a different brand and things like that. And what we talked about was that as long as we want to keep the real estate agent in front of the client, we're both on the same side of the fence. And you can be our co-op broker, but really taking care of our co-op brokers and understanding both of us have the same interest, which is our clients at the end of the day. And I think that there is a lot of technology out there that wants to get the real estate agent out of the industry. We know that, we've been hearing about it forever. So when you talked about, like we were talking about the brick fund, we're talking about progression. We saw a pandemic. We've never seen that before. We don't love this crazy market. I guess the questions that everybody asks me as a coach, as a leader in a real estate company is, how's this going to translate out? How's it going to shake out? And I heard this one time, someone said, it's actually a top agent in my brokerage here. He said, I'm going to bet that people always want to live indoors. That's one. So I think people are going to be always buying houses. He goes, I'm going to bet that on the fact that people want to live indoors. Second thing is that I think that we lend, as real estate agents, I think that you all lend a level of service that the client actually needs that they cannot find on the internet. So I'm going to believe that progression is still going to keep the real estate agent in the transaction. Do you believe that?
I do believe that, and I'm not saying that just so we can play nice here in front of everybody.
I love playing.
But I'm going to say that I heard, maybe it was someone you had, maybe I was listening to one of your other episodes. I've heard a couple of people talk about what the future looks like, and I don't know what it looks like.
Nobody.
I do know what you said is true though. As these transactions become more and more complex and more valuable, and there's more and more money at stake,
Yeah.
what a great opportunity as an agent, as a fiduciary, as an advisor to really be good at both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Not the transaction level. I mean, one of the things I talk about in the book is the levels of a transaction, and the highest level is to be a trusted advisor, someone where your breadth of knowledge and your depth of your emotional intelligence and relationship skills come to a peak. And when you can be that for a client, you're never irreplaceable with technology. And so I think for me, doubling down on my people skills, my depth of knowledge, those are the things that are going to keep me selling homes for my best clients.
I love that you are constantly reading, and that you, like I said, you had quoted quite a few books. And I always tell people, what got you here is not going to get you there. You have to get a different voice in your head. And if that means that today you're packing in new books, new articles, new information, do that for your clients. But one of the things that you talked about was the Go-Giver. And I find this book such a simple book, and because it is so simple, it is gold in every real estate agent's business. So in the Go-Giver, you talked about how you learn that to make your success even bigger, and you talked about value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. So do you want to touch on that a little bit, about how that small little baby book that's about literally this big for the audience
Sure.
that see me, crazy, right? And it just changes your world after you read it. You're like, duh, why haven't I been taking care of people at this level?
Yeah. And this is going to sound totally obnoxious. So, I had kind of the sense that was the right path before I read the book. The book to me was like, see, I was on the right path.
Yeah.
And let me tell you why. Because what I realized, and I do actually, and I tell this story in the book, is that I realized at the door, maybe in the 70s and 80s, maybe in those days, door knocking and getting a deal at the door was a thing. That's not really a thing anymore, right? The world is it's not the way it works.
I keep
usually
waiting for new encyclopedias to show up, and they're just not there. So
they're just not there. However, what I learned early on when I'm at the door, that I could win at every door, and it was three things. And the first was, I realized when I'm knocking, if I'm knocking on your door right now, Leann, I am doing two things. I am trespassing on your property and interrupting your day uninvited. Those two things are absolutely true.
Yeah.
And so having a sense of I'm there to leave you better off than when I found you, not like I'm some messiah, but that with that intention, acknowledging what I just said. So that's the first piece. Second piece is, look, I do have 3 kids to feed. I am looking for now business, not, hey, yeah, we're going to move when our kids graduate high school. What grade are your kids in? 8th grade? Yeah, I don't want to talk to you, right? I mean, it's a lifetime away. So I'm looking for now business. And then third, how can I be of service? It's so easy, right? When you're at the door, I'm a real estate agent, they're a homeowner, I'm in the business, I have a list of everything, contractors, painters, sprinklers, tree people, right? It's so easy to do something to be of service. And so those were my 3 intentions. And those are really, in some way, I looked in the Go-Giver, I'm like, this is exactly, my philosophy at the door.
Do you leave things with them when you show up?
I do, but that's not really the point. I've gone to the doors with nothing. I've gone to the doors, got out of my car, again, progression, beginning, oh my God, I got to have the right piece and it's got to look amazing and all this.
Yeah.
Wasted so much time to the point where I've gone to the doors. I've gone out into the neighborhood where I was looking for a house for a particular buyer, and I'm just, door. And I'm talking to people, and I get to door and I'm telling them, they're like, oh yeah, do you have a card? And I'm like, nope, let me have your number. I'm taking their number. I mean, you don't need it. You don't need it.
I haven't had business cards for over a year. and I just wanted to see what would happen. So I just stopped ordering them. I have them laying around somewhere, but I just stopped ordering them. I'm like, I will send you my contact card from my phone. And I don't know why more people don't do that, because now I have your information and we're doing something, right? Well, good. So did it change? Did the Go Giver change your compensation?
I think I would say, I read that book in 2014. I know because that's when I did Ninja Selling, and that's where I was introduced to the book. I don't know if you guys are big Ninja Selling fans, but Larry Kendall's here in Colorado, and Larry Kendall is a treasure. I love that guy. About that time, from that point forward, I really did get that the biggest gift I could give people was myself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm at the door, or really anywhere, if you can be present and let someone say what they need to say or what needs to be said for them.
Yeah.
And with not arguing, with not convincing, with not cajoling or selling, that is like the biggest gift you can give another human being. And I was basically doing that at the door. And the people that I've met and the relationships I've gotten are priceless, because really that's all I gave them, was an opportunity to be heard. And I think, well, yeah, that's really all there is to say.
I mean, you do talk about how time is very precious in your book as well. What it sounds like to me is that the person felt like this was a great use of their time to have conversations, because you did show up in a way that was a flow, not a manipulation or a force. And I think a lot of people, I read this really weird book called Power versus Force.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is kind of a quirky little weird book, but what you're saying is you showed up with power as a real estate agent, not a force. And I think that is really an important thing for people to hear too. Okay, let's talk about Ray Dalio and Principles, because that is a really cool book. It's also a favorite book of mine. Very interesting. I got it as a gift, and somehow, I don't know if I'm on a book club right now, by the way, I'm going to throw this in there. Somebody sends me a new book every week. This would happen at the same time that you contacted me. And I was like, who's sending me books? So I'd take a picture on the internet. I'd say, did you give me this gift? No one has come forward. And then you came forward. I was like, the universe is telling me I need to be in relationship with authors. I don't know. I love this. So Ray Dalio, Principles, favorite book of mine. You quote that he says, when we focus on being right, we make the other person wrong. So this is a great transition from what you were saying, that power versus force. So tell us how I'm sorry creates space in your world with a client.
Well, first we have to decide, do we want to be right? Are we willing to let go of being right? Mm-hmm. And if you're not willing to let go of being right, then everything else I'm about to say is irrelevant.
Ego. Yeah.
and don't get me wrong, I love being right. So I'm not saying I've got this handled. I'm just saying I'm aware that I'm being a jerk often. And so that's the first thing. And the second thing is, we have to ask ourselves, are we willing to be responsible? Not a little responsible, 100% responsibility. And I learned this many, like in the year 2000, I remember doing this leadership program. And I remember this guy sitting in the front of the room, and he said, whenever there's something wrong in my marriage, I know exactly where to look. And he went like this. He's like, and it doesn't matter what it is. He was gay, so when my husband, if my husband left the dishes out or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's always me that's responsible, because when you're willing to be responsible, then I have a say in how it goes. If it's Leann's fault, darn it, Leann made me come on this podcast, and Leann's not letting me talk about what I want to talk about, and Leann's blah, 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 right? Then I'm at the effect of I'm a victim.
Yeah.
And I have no say how that goes. So if you're willing to be responsible, even if in any given moment, if you're willing to take on being responsible, by the way, responsibility does not mean blame, or fault. It's not what it means. It's not what it means. It just means it's a point of view I'm willing to be responsible, willing to take on as a point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm willing to be responsible, then one of the very first things, if I'm willing to say I'm sorry, and then fill in the blank with something that's authentic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry, Leann, that I didn't get back to you on these questions earlier. It was my fault. I should have gotten back to you. You were waiting for me to get back to you, and I didn't do it. I'm sorry. I didn't fill in some excuse. I didn't tell you. I didn't give you. I try and BS my way through it. I just said I'm responsible. And the moment I do that, there's now a space where I've apologized and I'm taking ownership of that. And now there is some space, even if it's small, where now we can create something new. And so when we're in a transaction or with a client and things are tense, my ego very often does not want to say I'm sorry or take responsibility when I'm pissed off at the other agent.
Right. They haven't been trained, or they don't know what they're doing. They're asking you to do all the work. I mean, yes.
But if I get on the phone and say, it works much better on the phone. It's hard to do on text. But if I say, hey, Leann, I'm really sorry. I said I would get you this answer by this date, and I didn't do that. Now, is there any blame or it's just, hey, I said I would do this and I didn't do it. So now there's some, because the other agency was like, yeah, you didn't. Yeah, you didn't do that. And they're a little more at ease, right? They're a little more not riled up. There's a little bit more room now to start to have a conversation about moving things forward. So, I mean, these are just some very quick examples, but I think hopefully it just highlights that there's some little glimmer of opportunity for people to explore.
It is a philosophy that I subscribe to, and I wanted you to explain it to our audience because I believe that as well. And there's not very many 5-star experiences that you go to that if you have a complaint, which 9 times out of 10, especially for high performing, high producing type of people, we're always a little bit dissatisfied anyway. I mean, we're not trying to be negative Nellies. We just want to have the best of the best. And so we might come back and say, let's say it is a 5-star hotel. Hey, can I have XYZ? And the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, I'm sorry. And I'll tell you, I stayed, it was in Mexico somewhere, and they would put their hand over their heart and they would say, my pleasure, after everything, not no problem, because I can't stand that word. They would say, no, my pleasure. And I came back and I told my staff, I love this experience, my pleasure. And put your hand over your heart so that it tells the person, this is really coming from my heart when I tell you it has been my pleasure to serve you. And I see people still doing it in my office still today. And so it is one of my most favorite things that you quoted in there. So I really appreciate that part of it. So let's talk about a couple other things, because I think it's fun for people to get to know you a little bit. You and I had a conversation prior to getting on live, and you said, I love helping people. So are you actively coaching other real estate agents right now?
Yes, yeah, I do help. And what do I help them in? I help them in the thing that I think, but what do you need is the coaching you give others is the only coaching you need for yourself. And so what matters is, from my experience, what I'm good at and what I know works is consistency, is showing up week in, week out. If you can show up for 50 weeks, you can have a great year.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. Okay. And so you're doing that. And are you book touring? Because I heard you were in a book club and then people are podcasting you. What's going on with your book?
Well, the book is the same thing as building a real estate business, right? It is, I am now door knocking my book, but I'm not literally knocking on doors, right? I'm literally reaching out, finding places to connect with people with the book. It is no different than how I built my real estate business. I'm in the same, books right here. I am confronted with all the same stuff that I was when I started knocking on doors, right? It really takes something to get out and spread the message.
It does.
I'm not Gary Keller, so no one knows who I am. And, I can't just call up and say, hey, it's me. Come let me in.
Well, especially in France, they're going to know who you are after this because for some odd reason, the second most downloaded place on my podcast is France. So we'll give it to all the French people that they're amazing for downloading. So they're going to get to know you too. So you can find Stephen's book online on Amazon. And what are your goals for this year? We'd love to hear it.
My goals are unexciting. Look, my goals are unique for me, and they keep me on the court. But I'll just say that there is no arriving, right? And wherever we are, right, there is some gap, right, between where we are this moment and where we're going. And so obviously we got to know where we're going, right? That's a whole other conversation. But assuming we've all spent the time that we know where we're going.
Yes.
That the journey, right, is to get there. But really, the journey is the reward.
It is.
The journey is the reward. And so yes, I have goals about getting the book out. I have goals still in my real estate business, but I'm also very clear that it's no fun to just hit my goal. The real juice is to be on the journey every day and still enjoy the ride, regardless of what my results are. And
that translates into so many different areas in life. Like I tell new brides that all the time. I'm like, you do understand the wedding day is going to be dumb. It's the journey of getting to that day, or it's the planning and the fun and like all of that. And it's the same thing with having children. It's like, that it's the journey. I couldn't wait for my kids to grow up. Now I can't wait. I wish that they were still babies. It's the journey. So I love that you said that. So many new agents especially really feel frustrated and distracted that first year. Like you said, they have that resistance and they just, I want them so bad to understand they're just breaking through ceilings and they just need to stay in on it. So I love that advice. Is there any parting thoughts that you'd like to leave us with?
Leave you with the last line of the book. Doors don't open themselves. Doors only open when you knock.
Yes, I love that. Okay, buy Stephen Ross's book on Amazon. Doors open when you knock. Thank you for being a guest today. We appreciate you so much. And we'll all make sure these people buy all your books.
Love it. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, Stephen. Thanks for joining us today on Getting to Know Your Realtor. This episode was brought to you by Lifeline for Hope. Be sure to catch us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, and be sure to subscribe. Thanks so much again for joining us today. Have a great day.